What if the story you were told about the Civil War was incomplete? What if behind the heroic speeches, the famous battles, and the idea of a noble fight for freedom, there existed a hidden reality, one filled with fear, political manipulation, suffering, and uncomfortable truths? For generations, history books have simplified the Civil War into a story of good versus evil, North versus South, freedom versus oppression. But real history is never that simple. Beneath the surface lies a far more complex and darker narrative, a story of divided loyalties, economic greed, human tragedy, and decisions made not just for justice, but for power. Tonight, we go beyond the pages of textbooks, and uncover the truth they didn't tell you. The Civil War is often introduced as a straightforward conflict, one side fighting to end slavery, the other fighting to preserve it. While slavery was undeniably central, reducing the war to a single issue oversimplifies a much larger and more complicated picture. The roots of the war stretched deep into the economic and political fabric of the nation. The North was rapidly industrializing, building factories, railroads, and financial systems that depended on tariffs and global trade. Meanwhile, the South's economy was built on agriculture, particularly cotton, which relied heavily on enslaved labor. These two systems were not just different, they were incompatible. As tensions grew, debates over states' rights, federal authority, and economic control intensified. Southern states feared losing their political power, while Northern leaders pushed for policies that benefited industrial growth. But what many people don't realize is that not everyone in the North was against slavery, and not everyone in the South supported it. Many Northern citizens were more concerned with preserving the Union than freeing enslaved people, while some Southerners opposed secession but were forced into it by political pressure. Even within families, loyalties were divided. Brothers fought against brothers, friends became enemies, and communities were torn apart. This was not just a national war, it was a deeply personal one. The idea of a united front on either side is largely a myth created after the war to simplify the narrative. In reality, confusion, doubt, and conflicting motivations existed everywhere. The Civil War didn't begin as a clear moral crusade, it began as a collision of interests, fears, and ambitions that had been building for decades. When the war finally erupted, the reality of combat quickly shattered any illusions of glory. Soldiers on both sides entered the conflict believing in honor, courage, and quick victory. What they encountered instead was horror beyond imagination. The Civil War became one of the deadliest conflicts in American history, not just because of combat, but because of disease, poor conditions, and lack of medical knowledge. Battlefields were chaotic and brutal. Weapons had advanced, but military tactics had not, leading to massive casualties in short periods of time. Soldiers charged into gunfire with little protection, and entire regiments could be wiped out within minutes. But even those who survived the battlefield often faced a worse fate afterward. Medical care was primitive, amputations were common, often performed without proper anesthesia, and infections spread rapidly. Disease was an even greater killer. Camps were overcrowded and unsanitary, leading to outbreaks of illnesses like dysentery and typhoid. Thousands of soldiers died without ever seeing combat. Prisoner of war camps revealed another dark side of the war. Conditions were inhumane, starvation, exposure, and disease were constant threats. Many prisoners died slowly, forgotten by the world outside. Civilians were not spared either. Entire towns were destroyed, farms burned, and families left homeless. War reached into everyday life, turning once peaceful areas into zones of fear and uncertainty. The suffering was not limited to soldiers, it was shared by an entire nation.